Hey, everybody, welcome back to the Modern Customer Podcast. Today we have a special repeat guest, Josh Linkner. Josh is an innovation expert, a tech entrepreneur, a New York Times best-selling author. He's a venture capital investor, professional jazz guitarist, and globally recognized innovation expert. He's the author of a few books, including Big Little Breakthroughs, Hacking Innovation, and Disciplined Dreaming. Today, we are creating a show just for you, the customer experience practitioner and leader, all around creativity and innovation for business. Please enjoy Josh Linkner. Hey, Josh, welcome to the Modern Customer Podcast. It's so nice to see you and your guitars today.
Well, thank you. Wonderful to be with you. And I always keep guitars handy just in case I have a moment that they're it's like break glass in case of emergency. I That's what I use guitars for.
That is an incredible business tool, and I know jazz has always been, like, a really big part of your life. My mom is an artist, so and I know you're a musician, and it's interesting to see the parallels between music, art, and then business, like, as far as creativity goes. Has music served you in your whole in your process?
It really has. In fact, music was my MBA basically. I've been playing jazz for many years. I'd never taken a business class, and at age 20, I started a tech company, and I had no idea what I was doing. I didn't know anything about business, but jazz is about situational awareness and responding to changing conditions and navigating uncertainty and ambiguity and co-creation and collaborating with others and responding quickly to setbacks and ultimately improvising to deliver the best possible outcomes. So when you take all that and like put the musical notes aside, that's exactly what we need to do in modern business. And it was really a wonderful teacher. It allowed me I wouldn't be here today without it.
Well, let's look back. I mean, it's the end of the year. We're recording this in early December 2024. It hasn't been the smoothest year. Customer service, there was an article in the Wall Street Journal that customer experience and service really is at an all time low. And there's just been a lot of volatility, we could say. You've still been on the road. I've seen, pictures and videos of you doing your thing, speaking to groups. Like, first, let's just start. Like, what are you seeing out there with your clients? Like, what are their challenges?
Yeah, I mean, I think the elephant in most rooms these days is AI, both what it is now and where it's headed. And so, think about from a customer service standpoint, I'm sure there's a lot of angst and concern. Will AI take my job? That kind of thing. For me, I'm actually really optimistic because I think that there's this intersection between technology and humanity that is going to end up being a really beautiful co-pilot situation. So I don't think it's going to like replace every job, although there may be some disruption. But I think that what it allows us to do is anything that can be truly automated should be awesome, which leaves the human side to be human, which is do the things that AI can't do, which is compassion and understanding and love and caring and artistry. And so I think that even though there's some angst anytime a new technology comes into play, there was concern about the telephone and the printing press. I think where it's going to land is actually really good for both customers and those delivering service.
So a lot of my listeners, my audience, they're on the problem side of an interaction. So when something breaks, when something goes wrong, they're the ones tasked with fixing it for the customer. In your opinion, what is the opportunity for customer service leaders that are listening to really start to think about technology as a way to enhance the experience for the customer?
Yeah, well, I think on the technology front, there's certainly opportunity to use technology to reach quicker conclusions, to look up information more quickly, the things that computers are great at. Review 600 other records and provide the top three recommendations that might solve the problem. So that type of stuff, I think, is very helpful not only for customers, but those again providing service. I think the thing that I would recommend, because I study human creativity a lot, I was thinking about this earlier today, actually. There's most of life is a series of problems or challenges. That's how you get ahead in business and family and relationships, etc. So you're constantly being like tossed. Here's a challenge. Here's something you got to worry about. And I think people can respond in two ways. The first way is you throw up your arms in defeat. You shrink. You give up or you become overwhelmed with the problem. You quickly go to all the negatives. Can't be done. Here's the obstacle. It's too big, too hard. I think the invitation is the great entrepreneurs and certainly people, great leaders in customer experience, take a different approach, which is simply to say, how can I design around the problem? Is there something I could tweak to make that problem less? Could I go over or around or through the problem in a different way? And so to me, this is really injecting inventive thinking and creative problem solving and rather than ingenuity, rather than just saying, okay, if it's slightly outside the normal boundaries, I have to have a panic attack. And to me, it's actually really liberating for people providing customer service and experience, because that allows us the opportunity to like leave our fingerprints on things, to think of a creative work through rather than feeling overwhelmed by a challenge that feels out of control.
Gosh, you spend your time speaking to a lot of groups. I'm sure you do a lot of workshops as well on creativity and how to work together to come to an innovative solution. For the contact center and for customer service groups, do you have any recommendations on like team building exercises or frameworks to really get to the heart of innovation to solve problems faster for customers?
Yeah, I do. First of all, I'll say that there's a time and place, well, for most things in life. So imagine if someone's a surgeon providing a different type of service. Of course, you don't want that person in the middle of a surgery to be like, "Oh, dude, I got an idea. Let's enter from the right instead of the left." Like that would be goofy. You want them though not to be uncreative, but in an appropriate setting, perhaps after the surgery or working with colleagues to explore new possibilities. I think the same is true on the front lines of customer service and experience. Whereas, if you're in the middle of it, if a client's freaking out, there is opportunity to be creative, I'm sure. But sometimes you just got to get through it. Whatever needs to happen, make the client happy. But where the real opportunity, I think, lies is that when we have the moment to zoom out for a second. And you asked about frameworks and ideas. I'll share one of my favorites. Most of us have a to-do list, likely a mile long. I recommend, and I hope after listening today, people keep a second running list. Why not also have a to test list? So, a
Mhm.
to test list is a running list of any idea that pops into your head, big, small, weird, half baked, doesn't matter. Stick it on the list with no judgment. And what I've learned is that the best leaders are the best experimenters. The best innovators are the best experimenters. And this really is more of like a mindset that you're always testing and tweaking new things. In other words, you don't have to like have some idea in the shower and then roll it out globally. That actually is really risky. A better approach is always be testing 4 or 5 things. Maybe it's the simple way you greet a customer in an interaction, or the way that you ask them for a minute to hold while you get back. I mean, these can be very small adjustments, but the idea is always testing and measuring, test and measure. Dump the experiments that don't work quickly, double down on the ones that do. And I find it's a really productive way to move innovation forward without the general corresponding overwhelm and risk of doing it. So a to test list is one. The other quick framework I'll suggest, which I just love, it's really one of my favorites. I call it the judo flip. So the judo flip is when you're trying to solve a problem or seize an opportunity, instead of just doing what you've always done or what is common in the industry, you just ask a simple question. Instead of doing the obvious, what would it look like if I judo flipped it? If I did the polar opposite of what your instincts are telling you? And again, you can do this in an appropriate way. You're not going to do this maybe on an immediate live customer when someone's upset. But the idea is challenging yourself rather than blindly complying with the rules of the past, to say what would happen if I was more of a rule breaker, if I could challenge things a bit. Again, I'm not asking them to break an actual rule, but it's more like thinking around a typical approach and a novel or a non-traditional approach. And that type of judo flip, like, oh, let's judo flip this. Is there a way to judo flip it? Maybe it's a capacity issue at a peak time on the customer service floor. It's like, okay, well, what's a judo flip solution instead of an obvious solution?
Yeah, I like that judo flip analogy because I spend a lot of time sitting in karate and watching my kids do karate. So I can really visualize that right now. I love this idea of really starting small, and it's sort of in the same vein as your book, Big Little Breakthroughs, which I did have you on the show to talk about a few years back. But it's the same idea in customer experience, that customer experience is a game of inches rather than yards. And I love that idea because that is really the only way to start. It's just tiny pieces, bit by bit.
You couldn't be more right. I completely agree with this. And the thing that's cool about it is that it's not because those big leaps, the miles that you talk about, like those can be overwhelming. And so what ends up happening is we can freeze up. If it's like, okay, invent some groundbreaking new idea that changes the world or do nothing, the stakes are so high that you end up doing nothing. Human nature, not critical. But if it's like, okay, could I take a baby step? Could I make a teeny little baby little modification or improvement? You take the stakes way down, and allows people to really step in to the creative power that we all have as human beings. So I completely agree. I love that phrasing.
I was looking at your LinkedIn recently, and I mean, AI is such a big topic, and I saw you were presenting to some media companies. So I imagine they wanted to hear about AI. I mean, what did you present to these clients, to these groups that are probably a little nervous about AI, like leaving them jobless, like obviously the media world. Did you have any tips that you shared with them that you can share with us?
Yeah, it's funny. So I have a technology background, but I don't write code. Like I'm not a deep technology person, and so I wasn't there to teach them about how to write code or better train an AI model. What I was there to talk to them about is how can we coexist in a world that where AI will continue to be a factor. And it's sort of what I talked about earlier, which is to double down on who you are as a person. Instead of trying to be AI, we're not going to out AI. Like I can't look up a piece of information faster than AI can. Never going to happen. But what I can do is I can have empathy for a customer that AI
Mhm.
simply cannot. And so I think, especially in this dimension, it's around isolating the things that humans are great at that AI can't, and isolating the things that AI is great at, and humans are less capable of that. Drudgery stuff, like really boring things. And so I think it's more about instead of trying to out AI, it's really to out win against AI with an expanded sense of humanity. Let the AI do the mundane stuff so we can shine and do the creative stuff.
Mhm, and the creative stuff really is the root of the experience economy, and I can't think of a more experiential thing than music, like going to a concert. Do you think customers want more experiential products rather than just traditional, like, transactional experiences? Do you think they want more rich experiences?
I think across the board, the answer is 100% yes. And that's the differentiator. Why does I've worked with many retailers, and they're like, well, how do I deal with online versus in store? And if someone can easily order something online, and maybe it's just a utility thing, they just need to order some new underwear or whatever. Yeah, they don't need to go to the store. Go to Amazon, you're good. So then you say, well, why would somebody go to the store instead of Amazon? Well, it creates there. Maybe there's a beautiful experience. Maybe there's something that's touching the five senses that an online transaction cannot. And so I think again, it's not in all cases. There are some things, if you're just selling Bic pens, maybe it's better to do it online and keep it transactional and quick. But if you're offering something that can touch a human being, that's when the experience really matters. And I'm from Detroit, and Henry Ford famously said that you can get his car in any color you want as long as it's black. And that was, I guess, a true statement because the Model T came in one color. And at that time, all that mattered was function, nothing else. Well, then once other people got pretty good at making cars, function was just the ante to play. And then they competed on design. You could have beautiful designs and colorful looks and all that kind of stuff. Then that became the ante to play. That's just the expectation. So what's the next battleground of competitive advantage? Experience. And so that again, I think is why one brand can soar against the other as opposed to racing to the bottom on price, is because you're creating these sort of rich, emotionally charged experiences.
I was recently in my friend's somewhat new BMW, and we were all going to dinner, and I was sitting in the back of it's an electric BMW, gorgeous, like souped up. And I was shocked that in my seat, I was in the back with my husband. His wife is pregnant, so she got the front seat and she's tall. I was fine sitting in the back. I had my own little phone. It looked like an iPhone, like on my armrest, where I could literally do back massage with the seat. I could change the music. I had my own temperature for my seat. I've never seen anything like this, and I thought, "This is experience and personalization at its best." And it's like now these cars, I mean, it's just incredible what they can do. It just made me think, your story made me think of that, like, wow, we're in such a crazy time where some of these car companies are just really bringing customer experience, making it really personalized through technology.
And to me, that's such a beautiful example because like the intense personalization, focus on experience, and you wouldn't think is that like a car maker's primary job, but that example, if you're comparing between two cars that are both get good gas mileage, in this case, electric didn't need that. They both do the job, they're both safe, but one has this bespoke experience and the other doesn't. That can tip the scales in favor of one car versus the other. So in other words, you're gaining competitive advantage through personalization and experience. And I think that metaphor can be expanded to almost every other industry. Maybe not if you're buying, industrial fittings for an oil rig or something, but in many other cases, certainly consumer oriented activities, experience will continue to matter.
I mean, imagine, like, sitting in the car on a long drive and, like, the seat literally massages your back. Like, I've never even heard of that. That's just, like, another level, and it's fun and exciting. Let's talk about the future of creativity and innovation. I mean, I know you're probably even thinking of your next book. Like, what's top of mind for you that you know audiences are going to want to start hearing about as we head toward 2025?
Yeah, to me, it's cultivating this capability that all human beings have. Human creativity is universal. It applies to all of us. It's sad for me when people say I'm a creative person or I'm not a creative person. Truth is, we're all creative people. If you're breathing, you're creative. If you like, we're hardwired to be that way, and we can express it in different modalities. Like, I play guitar pretty well. I can't draw at all. Like, I'm terrible at that. Doesn't mean I'm not creative. I just express it in a different way. So people don't need to think, oh, I have to paint on canvas or do interpretive dance to be creative. You can be creative in customer service. You can be creative in finance and legal and every box on the org chart. And I think increasingly, again, back to this notion of age of AI, things that can be automated will be. And where we really can shine are those creative, more nuanced areas that technology cannot do. I think it's a beautiful invitation, actually, because we get to talk about stepping into who we are as people, our raw humanity, and this ability to create net new ideas. I mean, what's more rewarding than that, both intrinsically and I think financially as well? So I think that's what people are saying is like, how can I cultivate this skill set? How can I build capacity? How can I unlock dormant creative capacity? And then once I have this raw energy, how can I apply it for outcomes, desired outcomes? I have this whole body of work these days around find a way, which is kind of a fun little catchphrase, but that's kind of what we do in life, isn't it? We got to find a way to navigate a customer service complaint. We have to find a way to create a beautiful experience for a customer. And so find a way is fun because it's not find the way, it's find a way, meaning that each of us can use our creativity to help find a different path to the same outcome. And then furthermore, it's about recognizing that there is a way that most problems can be solved with enough ingenuity and creativity. So the whole kind of thing that you asked what people are craving is saying, okay, how can I cultivate and this capacity, release dormant creative ability, and apply it to the things that I crave the most? And when you do that, I mean, it's a beautiful way to walk through life. It's intrinsically rewarding, and of course, it drives incredible economic outcomes as well.
When I imagine someone working at a big company, and I used to work at Intel actually as a customer service on the customer service team, I imagine, one of the reasons that people are not creative is fear. I can remember just being in meetings with people who had worked at the company for like 30 years, and I was the youngest one. And it's nerve wracking to present a new idea, to even tell a story. So, what are the ways that our audience can tackle their own fear of being creative and taking a chance by presenting an idea where the idea could be shot down?
Excellent question. And you're exactly right. Fear is the single biggest blocker of creative output, not natural talent, fear. And fear is that poisonous force that robs us of expressing our creative abilities. And simply put, fear and creativity cannot coexist. So, for any leaders that are listening, your primary job, a core responsibility, is to remove the fear and let creativity blossom naturally. Think about like creating the right conditions. A greenhouse, for example, is the right conditions for plant growth. The right temperature and humidity and sunlight and all that. Now imagine you put that greenhouse there. There's no light. There's no humidity. Plants would die. That's what happens in most companies. We're in a sensory deprivation chamber of an office. There's all this fear lingering around, and then we wonder why our folks aren't expressing creativity. So, primary job number one of leaders: remove the fear. How do we do that? Is the answer to is the question you asked. We can do that in some really simple ways. One is by modeling that fear doesn't lead to punishment, and rituals are very good for this. One company that we work with it issues every year a Failure of the Year award. And this
Mhm.
goes for the team or individual that had a great idea. Their numbers made sense and they went for it and it didn't work out. But instead of getting fired or sent to timeout, they get a standing ovation. And just think about how it would feel in that company if you were there that, okay, they have my back. Another fun one is I interviewed someone for my book. And I was asking him, he had this really innovative company. How do you keep your people innovating? He said, well, one of the things we do is we have a ritual every Friday. It's called F Up Fridays. He says the whole word. I'll be polite here, but F up Fridays, one by one, each person has to stand up and proudly share what they effed up that week and what they learned from it. And inevitably, they get to someone that didn't F something up that week. And everyone's like, well, why not? What are you going to do differently next time? And so the whole notion is you're creating this environment that's safe through ritual. And the message, the implicit message is that being an innovator is part of my job, that I'm responsible for always challenging and asking questions and pushing the status quo, that my company has my back when I don't get it right. It recognizes that mistakes are the portals of discovery, that if we really crave innovation, we're going to have to tolerate some setbacks along the way. So that zero cost ritual is a perfect example of like bringing that safety to life. And one more that's just really fun I'll share is Aerosmith is, of course, a very famous band, but they're also a business, and like businesses, they actually have meetings. Once a month, they have a meeting called the Dare to Suck meeting. And lead singer Steven Tyler says, yeah, actually, here's what happens. You have to come to the meeting with ideas that are so weird, so provocative, they're probably going to suck. It's like most of them do, like 9 out of 10 really are terrible. But that weird oddball one, the 1 out of 10, it's like that's where we've gotten some of our biggest hits. Dude looked like a lady or love in an elevator came from the Dare to Suck meeting. And so again, you're just putting a framework around this notion of how do we remove fear and cultivate some creative courage. And those are some fun ways to go about it.
I think of it as the 80-20 principle. I have little kids and things go wrong a lot. I have aging dogs. Jacob Morgan, my husband, we both have small businesses. Things go wrong. So I like to think of the 80-20, that 20% of life just gets messed up. Things go wrong, not regularly scheduled programming like the 80%. And so like last week at Thanksgiving when I inevitably broke a dish because it was hot and there were tons of people in the kitchen, I put it down too fast, like we all just laugh and no one gets upset because it's the 20% of the garbage of the F up, as you call it.
You're exactly right. By the way, if you shot for 100%, like zero error, you would immediately strip all creativity out of the equation. And that's of
Mhm.
course true in families and also in businesses. So companies like Microsoft and Google, they run thousands and thousands of experiments constantly, and most don't work. So in their case, the optimal number of failed experiments isn't zero. It's more like 30%. And so just like your 80-20 rule, the idea is like giving yourself a little room, saying that it's going to take some missteps to get to the things that we really crave the most.
And if you expect them to happen, you're beating yourself up less because you're like, oh, yeah, that's the 20% margin for error. That's okay. And so you don't get so hung up on it.
Exactly right.
All right. Well, let's have a little fun, Josh. Although the whole interview with you is always fun because you're such a good storyteller. But let's do rapid fire. You game for some quick questions.
Yeah, heck yeah, fire away.
All right, Josh. What's the most important part of your morning routine?
The most important part of my morning routine is I do a 2 minute creativity ritual every morning. First minute is I absorb the creativity of others. I might listen to music, stare at a painting, read a poem out loud. All I'm doing is sort of basking in what's possible and recognizing that if other people can creative, why couldn't I? The second minute is I take on what I call an unrelated problem. How could I speed up lines at the TSA security in an airport? How
Yeah.
could I, if I was the mayor of Nashville, how could I win more Olympic medals or whatever? So the idea is that it's not a personal problem that I have a stake in the game. It's something outside there. I just think of that as jumping jacks for my creativity. And
Hmm.
so 2 minutes, 1 minute's like a warm up, absorbing creativity of others. The second minute is just practicing your creativity on something that has nothing to do with you. And I'm telling anyone who's listening, if you do that for 30 days, try a 30-day experiment, you will be blown away. You will like awaken this dormant capacity that you can't even imagine.
And then what do you do to relax at the end of a hectic day?
Well, I am obsessed with my wife Tia. She's the love of my life, and I can just sit there and stare at her all day. And not only because of her physical beauty, I just think she's an incredible human. So anytime I get with Tia is amazing. I have 8-year-old twins, Avi and Talia, who are very cute and very funny and little artists in their own right. So that's cool. We have a 3.5 pound Yorkie named Da Vinci. So he obviously protects the household, but he's fun to hang out with. But for me, of course, as you might imagine, my biggest unwind is playing music. I've been playing for 40 years, and even if I get 3 or 4 minutes with a guitar in my hand, it's the perfect way to release and reset.
Josh, what show are you currently streaming right now?
We just started a new one last night called Lioness, which is on Showtime, and it's about these incredible women that are on the front lines of thwarting the bad guys in the CIA and stuff. So it's pretty darn good so far.
What's your idea of perfect happiness?
Mm. Well, not to get all spiritual on you, but I think perfect happiness has much less to do with external and much more to do with internal. So it isn't like, oh, I'm sitting on this perfect beach having the perfect margarita. It's more about a state of being when your heart is open, when you're accepting of things, when you're not, longing for something else, but rather just sitting in your presence and truth. And to me, especially if you're doing that with others, if your heart is open and you're connecting at a very human level, I don't know what gets happier for me than that.
And what is one mental health strategy for managing hard days?
A mental health strategy for managing hard days for me anyway is separating myself from the emotion or separating myself from the outcome. So instead of like, oh, I'm angry, it's like I'm feeling angry. Or I fail. I'm a failure. It's like, oh, I screwed up. It said I'm a failure. It's like, oh, I messed up this project. And so it's not internalizing the bad stuff and not putting enormous amounts of pressure on ourselves to be perfect at every moment. I think it's separating, our soul, our consciousness from the external thing. And when I can create that separation, it is a very strong mental health effect. It sort of dissipates the angst and overwhelm and anxiety.
I love that. And what's your favorite type of vacation?
Well, as mentioned, anywhere with my wife Tia is good with me. But we love getting out on the water. So if I get a chance to be out, and there's something just peaceful and natural about being in the ocean, specifically, but anything with water. So if there's some wetness around, I'm in.
If you could have lunch with anyone dead or alive, who would it be?
I think my selection here will be John Coltrane. So John Coltrane is one of my musical heroes. He's a very famous jazz musician, long ago passed away, and he wrote this piece called Giant Steps, where he literally took the rules of music and broke them as far as you could break them. It became one of his most prolific pieces of work. It's actually the ringtone on my phone. So I'd love to sit with a person who was so prolific and broke the old mold to discover a new one in such an incredible way. So I think I'd have lunch with John Coltrane.
And lastly, if you had to describe your outlook in one quick motto, what would it be?
Find a way. Back
Perfect.
to my original thought that there are problems can be solved, opportunities can be seized. If not us, then who? If not now, then when? Let's go out there and find a way.
Well, Josh, this has been so fun. It's always a pleasure to listen to you speak, and I really appreciate you coming back. And hopefully, you'll come back again, even maybe next year. So, thanks for doing this.
Truly a pleasure. And thank you for doing this important work and serving so many people. I really appreciate you.
Hey, everybody, you've all been tuning into the Modern Customer Podcast. Check out Josh Linkner's website, his books, and until next time, thanks for tuning in. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to subscribe to my YouTube channel or follow me on social media, including Instagram, LinkedIn, X, and more.